Hello everyone, I'm here with the Mono White Master, Craig Wescoe. For people who don't know, Craig Wescoe is, you almost always play white aggro decks. We're gonna get to that later. You also have 3 Pro Tortopates with a win. You also have a 5th place at Worlds. Is that included in the 3 Topates, or is that like a 4th Topate?
Well, they cut to top 4, so it was basically like getting 9th.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. And you have 10 GP top 8s with a win as well. So, you definitely were one of the really, really good players. And I'm happy I can talk to you today. How is it going?
Going all right. Yeah, and just to clarify, you said I almost always play white aggro decks. I think that it's safe to say I just always play white aggro decks.
Okay, I wasn't 100% sure, so okay. Thanks for the clarification. Before we go to Magic, let's talk about other things a little bit so that people get to know you a little bit better. When I asked you on Twitter, you said that you're a vegan and you're also a Christian. Are you vegan because of that? I'm not actually sure how that works out.
Yeah, so I guess most people who know me and who have followed my career and social media, things like that, know that I'm pretty outspoken about some of my convictions. So, for instance, I'm a Christian. I believe in the God of the Bible, and that's been a big part of my life for a long time. And veganism is just kind of concern for animals. I don't eat animals, harm animals in my lifestyle, things like that. And that is a derivative of my faith. Just like showing love to my neighbor, whether it's a human or an animal.
Were you Christian since you were born, or did you eventually start believing?
I was about 20, so about half
really?
my life.
Wow. Well, that's actually interesting. I don't really know that many people who are like that. Can you maybe explain a little bit why you decided? If you don't want to talk about it, it's fine. But if you want to, that's very interesting. So I would like to hear more about that. If you can explain why, what kind of convinced you to go that way.
Yeah, so I think I've always kind of been interested in philosophy and just kind of like questioning why do things work the way they do, understanding the world and how things came to be, things like that. And also interested kind of in ethics, like what's the right way to live, like what's the best way for the world to be, things like that. And I started talking to a group of Christians when I was started college. I think I was around 20, something like that. And yeah, basically I had a whole bunch of questions and they would show me in the Bible, like their beliefs. And so after a while, I finally kind of clicked and it made sense. And I was like, all right, this is kind of the view of God and the view of the universe that I believe. My views are a lot different than a lot of Christians. I've never met 2 Christians that believe exactly the same thing. And I think that's true of pretty much anyone. But yeah, it's kind of been a big part of my life ever since I kind of had that spiritual awakening or whatever you'd want to call it when I was about 20.
So you became vegan after that as well, right? It was kind of connected to that?
Shortly after, yeah.
That must be really hard to be a vegan. I assume that if you go to all these Pro Tours and stuff, do you bring? I mean, you're not going to Pro Tours anymore. No one is. But when you were, do you just have to bring your own food, or how does that work out?
Yeah, it's actually not that hard now, especially like in the Western world. Really, any place where there's a whole bunch of access to different things. So when I started trying to be vegan, maybe 17 years ago, we didn't have a lot of the things that we have today. We have all kinds of, I call them transition foods, but basically Gardein, we have Morningstar, we have like all these restaurants that have vegan options, some all vegan restaurants. So it's like very easy, I think, now to be vegan if you just care to do it, whether it's for your health or for the animals or for the sustainability of the planet. But yeah, back when I first started, it was kind of like, so what do I eat? Like rice, beans, vegetables. But yeah, going to Pro Tours, I would bring a food bag oftentimes. and just kind of it's not that hard if you prepare, just bringing nuts and bringing bananas and stuff like that.
Were you maybe a vegetarian before that, or were you just like, eating meat and everything, and then suddenly you went to vegan? Because that transition, just like not eating meat at all, must be really hard, right?
I tried to make the transition right away. There were a few things that I was eating that I was like, okay, how do I cut this out of my diet? Where I went from eating like hamburgers to eating like veggie burgers. But at the time, there weren't really any vegan veggie burgers and things like that, which now there's plenty. There's Beyond, Impossible, a whole bunch of options. But when I first started, there were a few things I transitioned to that I guess would be vegetarian and not vegan. But yeah, it was pretty much abrupt once I was like, okay, this is definitely something I need to do. I just kind of did it.
I see. So you stopped playing Magic, I mean, maybe not completely, but you stopped playing Pro Tours in late 2018. What did you start focusing on? You told me a little bit on Twitter that you're like focusing on animal rights and stuff like that. Can you maybe talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, so I moved to California and I started getting really involved in animal rights activism, which is something I've been wanting to do for the past several years, but it's hard to do that when you're traveling every weekend for Pro Tour and Grand Prix and stuff. And so now that that was finally a thing that was taking a back seat, I started going to, I think I went to maybe 150 animal rights protests and disruptions and outreach events, and just like really dove into it. And I also got a lot more active in ministry. So I found a church and I started teaching at the church and started organizing Bible studies and things like that. So all the things that I've been wanting to do for the past, I don't know, 5 years of just not really any time when you're a pro Magic player. I'm sure you know how that is.
I get, well, I guess I get it. It's not like I had that many things that I wanted to do, like you maybe, but I guess I get it a little bit, I guess.
But there's no time for things when you're,
That's
I
true.
was
That
like
is
writing
true. That is true. That
articles
is true.
full time, preparing for tournaments, going to tournaments.
That is true. So we started talking about Magic a little bit. So let's just stay there. You started playing in like '95, if I'm not mistaken, but you played your first Pro Tour in '99, right?
Yeah, my first Pro Tour was Washington, D.C., 99, and I started playing my first experience of Magic was I bought a starter deck of Ice Age, and my brother bought a starter deck of 4th edition, and we just tried to figure out the rules together and play from there.
What does it mean? Try to figure out the rules. Did you just like I don't know how it worked back then. Like if you open a booster right now, there is like no rules or anything. You can I guess you can search it on the internet. I don't know how it was back then. Like, was there some book where you can like learn the rules, or how did that go?
Yeah, so the internet wasn't really a big thing at that time, and the starter decks were basically 3 booster packs together in this small box, and it came with a little rule book. And so when you started playing Magic, you would just read that little rule book that came in the starter deck.
I see.
And we were kind of reading the rules and trying to figure things out, figuring out how mana works, how the different phases work. And I remember my best card, or what I thought was my best card at the time, was this card called Illusionary Wall, because we didn't know that walls couldn't attack. So it was like this 7/4 flyer for 4, and it had cumulative upkeep, and we're like, what's that? It's like, I don't know, let's just ignore it. So it's just this like super powerful creature that just like won me all my games.
Isn't it written on the walls that they can't attack though? Like literally on the card? I'm not actually sure.
So they started doing that, I guess, because other people had the same kind of problem that my brother and I had. But no, at this time, it was just summon wall was just the one creature type that couldn't attack, and you just had to know that or read that part of the rule book.
I see. So you played your first Pro Tour in '99, but I assume it took you like a long time to become an actual pro, right? How did that transition happen? Was it intentional, or you just kind of happened to be good? If you can talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, so I started playing PTQs pretty early on when I was got involved in Magic, because the competitive aspect was really enticing to me. I used to play sports, and then like Magic was kind of like my competitive outlet. And I qualified for a few Pro Tours, played, never cashed any when I was like a teenager. And then I stopped playing Magic when I went to college, and I got back into it when I was in grad school. And I started playing PTQs, and I won a PTQ for Honolulu 2009. And then I think I did well enough in the constructed portion. I went like 7-3, and that qualified me on rating. They had ELO rating back then.
I remember.
And so that qualified me for Austin. And then I forget how it all worked, but somehow I qualified. I might have won another PTQ or something for Rome, and that was the World Championship, and I top 50'd that, which qualified me for Pro Tour San Diego 2010, and then I top 4'd that Pro Tour, and that qualified me like for the next year, and kind of that was my first time of being like on the train as a pro player, and so that was my opportunity where I was like, wow, I just won $13,000, and I'm invited for a year of Pro Tours. And I was actually the first Pro Tour of the season, so it actually qualified me for 7 Pro Tours.
Oh,
and so I was
that's
like,
nice.
yeah. So I was basically like, I'm just going to play Pro Magic. This is something I've always dreamed about. I want to see how good I am. I've never been able to devote all my time to Magic. So I was like, I just dropped out of grad school and just pursued Pro Magic, because that was like my one opportunity, I guess. Chained 1 year to the next, to the next, to the next, and then ended up doing it for like 9 years, 10 years.
But isn't it kind of discouraging that you're like, you know for sure that you queued for the next 7 Pro Tours? You don't even have to like do that well in this year. But you're like trying anyway, or do you know what I mean?
I could see where someone might fall into that mindset if their only goal is to qualify for the Pro Tour. But my goal was to see how good I could be at Magic, because I'd never done anything more than like top 8 at Grand Prix. And so that was like my opportunity to see like how good I could really be. You know, like I grew up looking at John Finkel and how he's like dominating the Pro Tour, and then like Kai dominates the Pro Tour. And I'm just like, I know they're better than me, but I don't know where my ceiling is. I don't know how, like what my potential is. So just devoting my time fully to Magic kind of revealed, okay, this is how good you could be. Obviously, I never got to be that good, but I at least accomplished my main goal of winning a Pro Tour.
How much did you actually play during that time? Did you just play every day, or how much did you actually play?
Yeah, pretty much from 2010 onward, I was pretty fully committed to Magic. I don't know if I could put in an hours per day kind of thing, but I'm sure I put in like 70-hour weeks.
Wow,
often.
really? Wow, that's
Yeah.
that's a lot. That's a lot. Sorry?
I think anyone who's been on a testing team with me knows that like the amount of work that I put in to prepare for tournaments is probably one of the factors that contributes most to the success that I've had.
I see. I had no idea. I had no idea. Yeah, you didn't. I don't know why, but you didn't really strike me as that kind of a person. But I guess I know now. So
You have to go real deep to know exactly what the best configuration is of White Weenie. I think I played with one of my teammates. He said, if we had a whole team of Craig Wescoes, I'm convinced that we would show up with 8 different builds of White Weenie for the tournament, because I would figure out every single possible avenue to play White Aggro and determine which one gives me the best chance.
Yeah, let's talk about it a little bit. Did you eventually got to a point where you just started playing Mono White, or was it the case since the beginning?
It wasn't from the beginning. It kind of developed over time, where I top 8'd the Pro Tour in San Diego 2010, where I played this Stoneforge Mystic, Elspeth, Trusty Machete, White Weenie deck. And that was just a deck where I thought it was the right everything for the tournament. Like Stoneforge Mystic, nobody really saw that as being the card that it was. People thought it was just kind of this okay card, but I saw it as like one of the best cards in the set. So I think that was kind of the thing that first got me interested, or I guess my first real success with White Weenie. And then I just started playing. I played all kinds of decks after that. Didn't really have any success. And then in Worlds 2011 in San Francisco, I played the Haunted Humans deck, and I top 8'd that tournament. So now it's like, okay, Craig, you're top 8'ing with these white aggro decks. And even at that point, like that's when I started kind of embracing the moniker. But it was still kind of like, all right, whatever. Like if there's a white aggro deck that's good, I want to play it. But I'm still playing all kinds of other decks. But then whenever I won Pro Tour Dragon's Maze with this white-green aggro deck, I was like, okay, I'm just going to embrace it. The only time I'm doing well is when I'm playing white aggro decks. Let's just play white aggro decks.
But I assume that there were like many times or tournaments where white aggro was actually like pretty bad objectively, but you played it anyway. Did you just play it because it was kind of your brand or like your thing, or you just like what do you think about that?
So it's a good question, and I can pinpoint the exact moment where I made that decision. It was at Pro Tour Amsterdam. I was looking at the standings. They just posted the standings after the Swiss, so they cut to top 8. And I was looking at the standings with Cedric Phillips, and we saw that Paul Rietzel and Kai Budd were both in the top 8 with this Mono White Weenie deck. I think it was an extended Pro Tour.
Mm-hmm.
And we both just kind of looked at each other, and I was like, "You didn't play White Weenie in this tournament, did you?" He's like, "Nope." And I was like, "Yeah, me either." And so that was kind of the moment where I was like, I don't want to be that guy that should have played White Weenie and didn't. It's Paul Rietzel like 9-0'd the top 8 of the Pro Tour and crushed it. I'd rather be the one who plays White Weenie when I'm not supposed to, and I just have a bad tournament, just so I never experience that again, where I'm just like, I should have played White Weenie in this tournament, and I didn't.
What did you actually play in that tournament if you didn't play White Weenie? Do you remember?
Yeah. Oh, I definitely remember. It's, I wake up sometimes in the middle of the night and with these cold sweats. It was blue-green, Tarmogoyf, Cryptic Command, some like metagame deck that I don't know, just it definitely should have been that Spectral Procession White Weenie deck though, for sure.
Mm-hmm. So literally never after that you played a different deck, because at a certain point everyone knew that you're always on white and they can maybe make like mulligan decisions and stuff like that based on that. So you would actually have a pretty good surprise factor if you didn't, but it just didn't happen, right? You just always played white anyway.
I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit.
Okay.
At Pro Tour Brussels, we came up. I was on Ultimate, not Ultimate Guard, Ultra Pro,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a really good testing team of very talented deck builders, and together we kind of came up with this Bant deck. I called it Bant Ojitai, and like I was kind of the one spearheading that thing, but it was kind of like a collaborative effort where everyone helped me like put it together, and I ended up getting 10th place, I think, at that Pro Tour, and I was the only person on the team who played the deck. But then at the Grand Prix the following weekend, Sam played the deck, and he top 8'd the Grand Prix as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it ended up being a good deck. Then someone else, I think Ben White's top 8'd another Grand Prix the weekend after with it. So it was a deck that it had white creatures, but it wasn't really a white aggro deck. It was more of a Bant mid-range deck.
Was it a deck with like den protectors and stuff, or is that a different deck? Okay,
No, yeah, that's right.
I remember. Okay, yeah, that deck was pretty good. So another thing that I want to ask about is about limited. Are you always forcing white in limited as well, or not always? How is it with draft?
Okay, so there was also a point in my career where I was trying to force mono white, and this was when there was Ravnica, I think, Return to Ravnica, where there's like Pack Rat, and Anyway, yeah, I tried to force Mono White in back-to-back Pro Tours, and my record in those two Pro Tours in the limited portion was a combined, I think, 1 and 11. Or no,
Wow.
I didn't day two one of them. I went 0-3, 0-3, 1-2. So I guess it was like 1 and 8 was my limited record. And so I was just like, you just can't force a color in limited. So I'm just going to go back to fundamentals and like draft smart, like play whatever's open, whatever comes to me. And so I switched, and I think Montreal was the last Pro Tour where I tried to force white in limited. And the next one was Dragon's Maze, where I was like, I'm just going to draft what's open. So I drafted Grixis, one draft and 3-0'd, then drafted Black Red and 3-0'd, and I won the Pro Tour. So I was like, okay, I guess just drafting the way I'm supposed to draft instead of forcing white. I went from going 1 and 9 to going 6 and 0. So I that's when I decided I'm going to stop doing that.
Yeah, I was actually wondering, like maybe not at the GPs. At the GP, there will be people who don't know you, but at the Pro Tour, most people know who you are. So I was just wondering if you sit next to them, they're just gonna avoid white because they know who you are. Did you ever feel that you're just getting past more white than you should be on average?
There was one tournament in particular where that might have happened. I want to say it was Pro Tour Philadelphia, the one where the Splinter Twin Infinite Fairies won the tournament. And I started taking white cards. I got past an Honor of the Pure. So I moved in on white. I got past another Honor of the Pure. And then I got past a third Honor of the Pure. So I ended up with 3 Honor of the Pures in my
crazy.
Mono White deck and 3-0'd with it. I think that tournament, I think people were kind of being like, all right, well, Craig's going to draft white, so I'm going to stay out of white. And then, yeah, I just ended up getting hooked up.
All right, that will be all for today. Thanks for your time. Before I wrap it up, maybe you want to tell people where they can find you on the internet if you want.
Yeah, so I'm Brimaz for life on Twitter. That's usually where I post about Magic. And then on Facebook, it's just my name.
Yeah. Okay, if you guys like the video, please click on the like and subscribe button. Thanks, Craig, and I'll see you next time.